loving people.
I'm 38. At 38 years old, I asked myself the question, if I look back, what were the happiest moments of my life? You know, it'd be tempting to think about the time when I entered the bookstore and I looked at this 10 best-selling list, you know, the top bestsellers, and I see my name there. Wow! Or if I think of the times where I would preach to thousands upon thousands of people, and I'd see their smiles, I'd see their tears, I'd see how they respond and how their health. I mean, yeah, that would be great. Or I'd think about the organizations I've built and I've founded, and they're able to help people. You know, these are very satisfying moments. And yet, if I'd ask myself that question from the core of my being, what were the happiest moments of my life? I'd have to be very honest and say, none of the above. I'd have to say, those small, simple moments where I'm able to give very simple love to individuals face to face. For example, the time when I entered this orphanage and I see these kids, and I'd say, hey, let's have a day of fun. Who's going to come with me? And they all rush to my car, all 15 kids. And I tell them, we're going to go to Enchanted Kingdom. And so everybody say, yay! And so we drive out. As I drive them off the orphanage, I start looking at our rearview mirror and start counting how many kids there were, 15. Now times 370 pesos per kid. And after I do my calculations, I announce, on second thought, I'm changing my mind. We're not going to Enchanted Kingdom. We're going to a far better place. And they say, where? And I say, at Quezon Memorial Circle. And of course, the back of my mind, I say it's free, you know, but I don't tell them that. And everybody says, yay! They didn't know. Anyway, we entered into Quezon Memorial Circle, and there were bikes there for rent. And I say, for 15 kids. Give them to me, and I paid, and I asked them how much, and they said 370 pesos for every bike. And so we had enormous fun the whole day. They were biking, we went swings and the seesaws, and you know, all sorts of fun the whole day. We had lunch together, we had a picnic together. At about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we went home, and they went to the car. I was still in second gear. You know, we just left the place when all the kids were asleep. Every single one was asleep except one little girl. This little girl was right behind me, and she had her chin on my shoulder. And she said, Kuya Bo, ang saya ko ngayon. And you know, I looked at her and I said, bakit? And I was thinking, oh, maybe because of the bike, maybe because of the picnic. And I said, bakit? And she said, kasi kasama ka namin ng buong araw. And you know, when she said that, I realized one thing. Mahirap mag-drive pag umiiyak ka. You know, I just felt so good. And if you're going to ask me the happiest moments of my life, that would be one of them. What would consist the happiest moments of my life? I spent 3 years in an orphanage and in building our home for the aged called Anawim. Anawim is a Hebrew word for the poor of the Lord. And I was there building up that place, that home for the aged and that orphanage for 3 whole years. You know, 4 or 5 days a week, I'd be there. There was no electricity in that place. There was no flowing water in that place. It was a difficult place. We would sleep in bamboo slats. Difficult, hard place. And yet, happy moments. You know, sitting beside a Lola that we picked up from the street, and she would tell me her stories about World War II again and again and again. And I just have to be listening to her and being able to feed them and being able to clothe them and being able to give them a hug. Simple moments of joy, of being able to love, the happiest moments of my life. If you're going to ask me what are the happiest moments of my life, they're really simple things of being with my wife. Yes, and just listening to her and talking to her over dinner, or playing with my son on the floor, wrestling with him, and playing his Legos and his cars, just having times of love and laughter and joy. These are the happiest moments of my life. Of being with my parents. They're kind of old already, And I remember, when I would give them a big hug, when I'd say, hugging my father, didn't come naturally. I mean, I think my whole life, I can only remember my father hugging me when I was a small boy, and they were not really great hugs. They were just little hugs, but I remember many years ago, not too long, my father met an accident, and when my father had an accident, he had he ended up in the hospital, and there was there's what do you call them, blood clots in his brain, and he was in the ICU for 6 whole months. And I remember I received a phone call from the doctor, and the doctor said, "Bo, you better come here. He can go anytime." And so I rushed there. I rushed beside his bedside. I could barely recognize him. He was really a dying man. His fingers and his hands, they were bluish in color already, and there had so many gadgets attached to his body. And then the doctor explained, "Bo, he's only accepting about 20% of oxygen that we're giving into his body, and he can go anytime." And so I stood there beside him, and I whispered to his ear, and I said, "Dad, I love you, and I know you love me too." And as I told him, "Dad, if you see Jesus anywhere, if you see God anywhere, just go with him. It's okay. It's really fine." And when I said that, a miracle happened. His eyes opened, and he just looked at me, and he did something that he had not done in such a long time. He raised both of his hands, and what a struggle that was, with tubes attached to his arms. He just raised them up, and then put his hands on my cheek. And then he pulled me down, and he gave me a hug. And he hasn't done that for such a long, long time. And my friend, when he did that, I was just like a volcano of emotions erupting in my heart. I said, "Okay, I'm happy you're hugging me. I'm happy you're embracing me. But for crying out loud, why only now? You're a dying man, and I'm this guy who's also growing old, and why only now?" I was angry. I was angry at him. I was angry at myself, because if he was not the hugging type, why didn't I hug him? And you know what happened? His arms collapsed after giving me a hug. And when his arms collapsed, I just took one step backwards. And then the doctors and the nurses came, and they continued to, take care of him. And after my mother was with me, and I gave her this hug, and we were just waiting for the last breath of my father. And then the doctor faces me after a few minutes, and the doctor says, "Bo, you can go home now." I said, "What happened?" And the doctor says, "Well, look at it. He's accepting now. His body's receiving 80% of the oxygen we're giving him. He's okay. He's not in critical condition anymore." And I said, "Oh, is that so?" And so I went home, and the next day I came back, and my father is even better. And the next day I came back, it's even better, and it's even better. And now my father is alive. And friends, do you know what we do every time we see each other? We don't care if we're in the mall and we're surrounded by hundreds of people. We don't care. Every time I see my father, I'd give him a hug, and he'd give me a hug. It's not a simple hug, it's a long one. We give each other a 1 minute, 2 minute hug, and we enjoy each other's embrace. And again, the happiest moments of my life, moments like that, when I receive a hug from my father, and when I give him. When I tell my mother, "Mom, I love you." Simple things that make someone happy is when you become a loving person.